My name is Juliet, and I'm 20 years old. I grew up in a poor family. Although my parents always struggled financially, they always tried to do their best for me. I was always self-conscious about my poor background, and so I never made many friends in school. But then one day, I met Tony, the most handsome guy in our class. I always tried to talk to him as much as possible and flirt with him to get his attention. Until one day, he asked me out on a date. It was one of the happiest days of my life. Tony, however, had previously dated another girl in our class, Amy. When they were together, Tony invited Amy to his house, and while she was there, Tony caught her smoking in his bedroom. He was disgusted, and so he told her to leave his house. She apologized and promised to stop smoking. He felt bad about the whole thing, so later that week, he brought her a super expensive, beautiful wristwatch to say sorry. He wanted to surprise her, and so when she wasn't looking, he tried to hide the watch in her bag, but in her bag, he found a packet of cigarettes. He was furious and broke up with her. Amy has hated me since she found out that Tony and I are dating. She once stole a book from the bag of one of our classmates and hid it in my bag. When our classmate realized his book was missing, he demanded that he search everyone's bag. Slowly but surely, he made it through the entire class, and when it got to my turn, I knew the book wasn't in my bag, so I wasn't nervous at all. When the book was found in my bag, I was so surprised and embarrassed that I ran out of the class crying. Luckily enough, Tony noticed that while everyone was in shock, Amy was giggling, so Tony scolded her and came to find me to comfort me. This only made Amy even more upset with me. Later on that week, Tony asked me out on a date to a fancy restaurant. Little did we know that Amy was listening to our conversation. The night of the date, I wore a beautiful white dress and arrived for the date 15 minutes early. I was so nervous because I'd never eaten at a fancy restaurant like this before due to my poor background. As a waiter came by, he spilled red wine all over my dress. I was so upset that I stood up, ready to run home. The waiter secretly ran around the corner where he was paid by Amy. As I stood there not knowing what to do, Tony approached me. He hugged me and said he saw everything. As we continued to have a lovely evening, despite Amy's scheme, Amy got even angrier. The next week, Tony invited me to dinner at his house to meet his parents. I arrived and we had a lovely evening, discussing all sorts of things: school, the weather, politics, movies, etc. But then they asked me about my parents and what they did for a living, and I explained that they had been struggling financially for a while. Tony's mother immediately asked me to leave, and I was so upset and cried all night long. The next day at school, Tony begged for my forgiveness and apologized a lot. He promised that he would never leave me, and it honestly made me feel a lot better. On the way home from school, I turned the corner and Amy and a few of her friends were blocking my path. She started calling me all sorts of horrible names like boyfriend snatcher. She went to hit me, but I fell onto the ground and they immediately called an ambulance. One of Amy's friends told Tony what happened and he rushed to the hospital. My parents explained that I had a kidney problem and that I needed a new kidney but didn't have a donor. Tony went home that night after staying by my side for hours, and his dad told him that one of his friends had a daughter that he wanted Tony to marry. Tony looked at the pictures of the daughter only to realize it was Amy. The next day, Tony went straight to the hospital and signed up to be my kidney donor. When I woke up, he explained what happened and gave me a big hug. He returned home to his father and explained what he did for me and how part of him was in me, and I was the only person he loved. Me and Tony have been happy together ever since.